So the parsha begins that Moishe Rabbeinu Vayakel, Moishe gathered all the Yidden, and he told them, these are the things Hashem told you to make. Context. As you know, the previous parshas, the last few parshas, starting Parshas Truma, dealing exclusively with the tremendous detail that Hashem commands Moshe Rabbeinu with respect to the Mishkan, the building of the house for Hashem and the clothing for the Kohen Gadol in great detail. Now he gathers all the Jews together and he tells them the instructions that he heard. And then the Torah goes on to say, in this week's Parsha, Vayakel and the Pakudei, the final summary of how they went and did, every detail was performed. Tremendous, it's almost repeated. The instructions, and then Moshe gives them over, and then the Torah describes how it was all executed, all carried out. So what does he say? We're expecting the next thing to come out of his mouth. Build the Mishkan. No, Shabbos. For 6 days of work. Now, the translation is may be done. There's an opinion that says work has to be done. He has to work 6 days. It's a mitzvah to work. We'll soon come back to that at the end. The 7 days holy. Shabbos Hashem, but they have complete rest to Hashem. You must, anybody who does work on Shabbos is put to death. And just in parentheses quickly, yeah, it's a capital offense. The fact is, it's almost never executed, because as you all know, in order for a person to be put to death by a court, the conditions are so extreme that it's virtually not impossible, but very unlikely to happen. You have to have 2 witnesses that see it, have to warn him. They've got to tell him it's forbidden, got to tell him the consequence. He has to acknowledge he heard it, and within seconds did it. Not the next day. Nobody's going to sin like that, no matter how you're caught up. It's discussion. Okay, it'll wait 5 minutes when they're gone. So the question is, if it's really ever happened, so what's the point of even saying the punishment? The Torah is just saying how serious this is. The Torah gives these capital offenses, even though it was rarely actually played out, but we're being told spiritually, the damage and what this is. So Shabbos is very serious. Then the next thing, you should not kindle a fire in your dwelling place on Shabbos. So we have basically 2. This is before I get into the depth. 2 basic questions here. The whole narrative is being interrupted with Shabbos, and then all of a sudden, fire. Not to light a fire. Let me explain the question on fire, one at a time. So number one, why is it interrupted with Shabbos? Let's answer the first question. Because the people might have thought the commandment to build the Mishkan is so critical. The house of Hashem is revealed on earth. It would override Shabbos. So before he tells them the instructions, go and make it, just want you to know, God told me, it doesn't override Shabbos. Okay, that we understand Pasuk Beis. That's why it's there. But why single out fire? Let's make the question stronger. And here's another reason, very important reason why we get now all of the laws of Shabbos, like in the whole context of building the Mishkan. How do we know what the laws of what work is on Shabbos? Not to do work. What does it mean? Lie in a hammock all day? Not to make a living. Rabbis make a living on Shabbos. They pay, but sometimes they do nothing else all week. He's preparing his speech, and that's it. It's quiet week. He works on Shabbos. So it's not about making a living and not about physical exertion. You would think it means physical exertion. You carry this table up and down all around the whole Shabbos. You've done nothing. So what is it? How do we know? So we know from here. He's about to command to build the Mishkan. Before that it doesn't supersede Shabbos to tell us. What is it you can't do on Shabbos? Anything that goes into making the Mishkan. Any activity that goes into making the house of God that you don't do on Shabbos. So the sages sat down, divinely inspired, actually passed down from Har Sinai, that it's 39 general labors, hinted into the words, Eile HaDvarim, these are the words. You tell me, Dvarim, words, what's the minimum of words? 2. That's 2. Eile, these, add up. Aleph is 1, Lamed is 30, Hey is 5. 1 and 30 and 5 is what? 37. And Dvarim 2, 39. So there's a hint here that there are 39 labors. Anything that goes into making the Mishkan, you don't do on Shabbos. Now the question now is, well, fire was integral. They had to light a fire to make the spices and for the melting of the precious metals to be able to mold them. Why does the Torah single out fire? It's a simple question at the simple level. Just before that, there's a joke, a bitter iron joke, is don't don't light a fire on Shabbos. Why? Because the whole week people come to shul, how they talk to each other, they're running it. Shabbos, they come to shul and they talk and the congregation gets together, and here's the potential for machlokes. Don't kindle any fires on Shabbos. Also because on Shabbos, who gets the honor? He wants to get shishi and shlishi. He wants the bretli, he wants the daven. The shtiblach. You can get a little tense when people are fighting for this. So don't light Shabbos in the fire. Don't light any fires on Shabbos. That's a kid remember hearing this. Someone's okay. Now let's look at Rashi. We're going to get to the Chassidus at the end, but it's very beautiful, deep, gewalt. But we're going to learn a little bit before this. So you got to click on it. The second thing, which says it has a gray box, yeah? That's Rashi's commentary. Let's look at it. You click on it, but he has it. Yeah, the pasuk said, "Don't light fire in all your dwelling places." But yeah, Shabbos. So Rashi said, maybe actually before we get to Rashi, I want to tell you another answer. There's many answers. The Torah singles out fire because this will be relevant later. Because on one level, fire is the least category of work that I would think. Why? Let me just explain. 39 categories of work. Is there anything common between all of them? The answer is yes. If you look at what's common is they all demonstrate man's manipulation of a nature. That's the definition of work on Shabbos. Divine intelligence, malechas machsheves osra Torah. The Torah forbade in work that's done with intent, where we're manipulating nature in some way. God says, hands off. 6 days, yes. 6 days to use your creativity to manipulate, to create, etc. But 1 day a week, hands off. Why? Simple. So that the whole week, when you're creative, there'll be a purpose for it. You need 1 day to step back. Why am I here? What's my purpose? What the whole purpose of creation? There's a God, a creator, so that all my doings and creativity during the week will not be, God forbid, to destroy and pollute and my world, but to enhance it. I mean, it's physically, spiritually, etc. So 1 day's day off, which, by the way, people like wondering, can have a timer. It's like you're getting around it. It's not getting around it. You can benefit from your creativity. Don't be engaged in it now. Have it set up before. What are you engaged in on Shabbos? Connecting to your family, to the Abishter community. It's a day of oneness. So they're all creative activities. And again, nothing to do with effort or being paid for it. It's creativity. That's what's not on Shabbos. And that also answers, what's the big deal putting on opening a switch? In the old days, making a fire, people, you had to work very hard to rub sticks, rub stones. Nothing to do with that. When you close the circuit, it's a creative act, and etc. So why is fire singled out? That's what we're asking now. So one of the simple answers is because fire exists in nature before the person. It doesn't so much show creativity of a person. Lightning strikes, there's fire, there's great heat, there's spontaneous combustion. So all the malachas are man coming along and he's showing you how he's controlling. I might think that fire is not part of that because that exists in nature before. Torah says fire is also. That's one answer. Okay. Right, now we'll look at Rashi's answer. Again, we'll get in the end in light of Chassidus. But let's learn something like Talmudic. Let's look inside. Let's read the English. Hebrew. Yesh Rabbi saying no aim. There's two opinions. There is Rabbi Yosin, Rabbi Nosen in the Gemara in Shabbos. So some say Havada lalav yotza, that kindling was singled out to make it only a simple negative commandment. V'yesh omi malachalik yotzas, and some say was singled out to separate. Let me explain what this means. The first opinion is Rabbi Yossi. He says the Torah singles out fire. It's not under the same category as all the other ones. The other ones are capital offenses. This one is just a regular prohibition. Takeles, for the reason I kind of told you, because it doesn't exhibit our mastery. It exists in nature before. So this is an opinion that indeed there's 39, but 38 all serious. This one is singled out. Don't do it because it's a separate prohibition, like any other don't do, which does not carry a capital offense. The Torah says don't do if you do it, you get lashes, but it's not a capital offense. That's one opinion. Second opinion is, on the contrary, it's singled out to teach us like this. I would think the Torah wouldn't say this like this. What if a person, behel lemechad, he forgot his Shabbos, or he was ignorant of the Shabbos laws and did many prohibitions? Now, if you do a prohibited act on Shabbos unintentionally, with the Beis Hamikdash stood, you have to bring a korban chatas, a sin offering. So the question now is, he did many in one state of either forgetfulness or ignorance. Does he bring a korban for every act he sowed, he plowed, he cut, he reaped, he baked? Does he bring many sin offerings, or does he bring only one? Mind you, in parenthesis, it's very likely that we will be bringing, sin offerings for sins we did inadvertently, now in time of Golus. The Gemara says about Rabbi Shmuel, very possibly be prepared. Levim going to be busy. The Kahanim. Sin done intentionally, there's no karbanis in general. It's just as an aside also. There's very few sacrifices for intentional sins. That needs teshuvah and a whole deeper. Very few. Most of the offerings for sins are for unintentional ones. Korban chatas. So the question is, a person, again, he forgot it was Shabbos, so he didn't know, and he did many acts. Does he bring one sin offering for all of them, or many? So this opinion says the Torah singles out one of them to say they're all treated independently. So you'd have to bring many sin offerings. Why single out fire as the example? Again, because even fire, because on one hand you might think it doesn't fall, not to be treated with the same as all others, it all is. I just want to point out here, and we'll try and explain it, that the two opinions are opposites when you think about it. Why did Torah single out fire? One opinion is to lower it. It's not as severe as the rest of them. The other opinion is fire is singled out to tell us something as stringency. It's an example. Every single prohibition that you do under one state of not knowing is a separate inadvertent transgression that warrants a separate korban. Maybe then we'll explain, is it opposite opinions? It's a bit stricter, is it to make it easier? Torah of truth. At the end, maybe next week, we'll explain how they complement. But our basic question now is this. Really, it is to get a little bit deeper into the whole thing of fire. It's our subject now. And why, as we just said now, of all the halachas that Moishe Rabbeinu identifies specifically for the reasons we gave, he separates fire in the context of not to work on Shabbos, even for the building of the Mishkan. So to do that, we're going to look at the prohibition of fire. And I want you to look at that final quote. I wrote it in the Hebrew and in the translation. So let's look at the translation because we're running out of time. This is from the Rambam, the 12th chapter of the Laws of Shabbos. We're just going to run through it quickly, and we'll ask a very strong, I'm going to lead you, you should ask the question. A person who kindles even the smallest fire is liable on Shabbos, provided he needs the ash that it creates. Yeah? Tzorich lafara, you have to need the ash. However, should a person kindle a fire with a destructive intent, he's not liable, for he's causing ruin. As we said before, all the works of Shabbos are man's mastery of a nature, some gain. But if you're doing something just in a destructive manner, as far as the Torah is concerned, there's no prohibition. You're just tearing on Shabbos. The sages forbid it as offensive on the Torah. But a destructive act on Shabbos per se, the Torah didn't prohibit. It's all about a mastery, a manipulation, a gain. Nevertheless, it's interesting. Allah, since it's here, we'll learn it. A person sets fire to a heap of produce or a dwelling belonging to a colleague is liable. It's destructive. So why is he liable? Because his intent is to take revenge on his enemies. Through this act, he calms his feelings and vents his rage. So he's doing a wrong thing. It's a bad thing. But since he has an intent and a gain, the Torah says that's significant and you're liable. Even though objectively you're destroyed. But his intent is revenge. This is very powerful. It shows how a person intent creates the reality. Stam to destroy is nothing. But if you mean that you put the death for it, you've granted that act, the power of a person's intent, the power of a person's kavanah. And the Rabbi continues, he's comparable to a person who rends his garments over the deceased person or in rage on Shabbos. So if you tear your garments because someone died, it's not just destructive, you're giving vent to your feelings. Or a person is on Shabbos is angry, or a person injures a colleague in an argument. Yeah? So he hits him. It's destructive, but for him it's positive because he wants a person to be hurt. So that is he's liable. These individuals are all considered to be performing constructive activity because of their evil inclination. They're doing something destructive, but they want to, and they have a personal gain. So that was like, what did you say now? In order to be liable for the obligation to light a fire on Shabbos, he says one of two things. You have to eat the ashes, or if you're destroying, you have to do it because you want to destroy. Then he concludes, number 3, similarly, a person lights a candle or wood to generate warmth or light is liable. Yeah? And why is he lighting the candle? Because he wants warmth, a fire, or the wood, or he wants to read. And another example is a person who heats iron in order because he wants to put it into the water and therefore to solidify it. So that's also an intent act, and he's also liable. Now, I'm going to lead you to the question. Just think a little bit now. If I would ask you, what's the purpose of lighting? The main purpose that you would think, the main prohibition, the main purpose of lighting a fire on Shabbos. Why would a person kindle a fire? What's it like the primary objective? The most obvious, common, every day. Why are you lighting a candle? Why are you lighting a fire? What would you say? What would you do? Because you want its what? Light, or you want its warmth? You want the ashes? Like, that's such a rare thing. Yet you want the ashes. And even more rare, hopefully, for you is to light a fire in someone's, what do you say here? A produce or dwelling. Surely that's an exception. That's what the Rambam starts with. He starts with lighting a fire because you want its ashes. You're lighting a fire because you want to do damage, and also lighting a fire on Shabbos because you want to read. That's the first thing, surely. That should be the illustration of an intentful lighting a fire. Why did you put it number 3? Or number 3. Or number 2? 3, sorry. Ashes, that's really 2, because to destroy someone's also negative. Okay, 2 or 3, whatever. The question is clear. It's very strange. So in summary, when lighting a fire, when telling us about the laws of lighting a fire on Shabbos, the Rambam should have said a person lights a fire on Shabbos with intent because he wants its light or its warmth is liable. Even if and likewise, if he doesn't want the light or warmth, but he wants the ashes, you're also liable. And even if he's lighting because he wants to take revenge, also liable. And even if he's lighting because he wants from this then to heat up the steel and then put it in the opposite in water, also liable because he heated it in order to. So now we're going to start the Chassidus now, inside, which is what we're going to get to. And then we'll explain everything. So I'll start today. Context here. The subject is the Mishkan. The subject is the Mishkan. Now, we said before, how do we know not what to do on Shabbos? Because the fact that the laws of Shabbos, before we get into the fire thing, is inserted smack in the middle of God's instructions and Moshe's instructions. Oh, that's what we're not allowed to do on Shabbos. Now, just a little bit deeper, because so during the week, you're supposed to do these labors. What's the point of all these labors? To build a Mishkan. The whole purpose of our laboring is to make this our home, a home for God, the world home for God. So we understand why it's not just, what can't you do on Shabbos, or the things they did to build the Mishkan. It's a connection. Because the labors we do during the week, it's all about making the world a home for God. And on Shabbos says, God, don't do it. Why? Because Shabbos, we have a taste of the perfect world. Shabbos is the taste of Moishe Mashiach. Hashem says today you don't work. Today you're going to connect to what the result of all your labor is going to be. It's all going to lead to the day Yom Shekoli Shabbos. It's all the day that is all Shabbos. So a deeper understanding of the connection. So in the middle of all of this, Moishe talks about in talking about Shabbos, he singles out the fire. What's the fire? Everybody knows right away, a flame. What does a flame symbolize? Kiner Hashem Nishmas Adam. The flame of Hashem is the soul of a Yid. Hashem is compared to a flame. That's how we light a yahrzeit candle, the flame. I think the Baal Shem Tov said, I think he was asked, why is it the Yidden? It's a whole story, a child. That's coming back to me. There was a question whether the child was a Jewish child or not. And the end was when the kids were learning, davening, so everybody to one degree is shackled a little bit, and this kid is sitting there, motionless. He investigated, adopted, not Jewish, whatever it was. Why does a Yid naturally shackle? He sways a little bit. He said, Baal Shem Tov, I'm pretty sure Baal Shem Tov, because the neshama is a flame, and the neshama flickers. Going deeper, what's the idea of why the neshama is compared to a flame? We'll start now and continue next week. A flame is the only thing, whichever the way you hold it, it goes up. Hold the candle sideways, the flame goes up. Hold it down, the flame goes up. Actually, it goes up even more intense. You burn your finger. What does this mean? A Yid, no matter what direction his life is pointing, he cannot repress his soul longing for a connection to the Eibush. And just occurs to me, when you hold the candle upside down, then mamish, consume the wick, you may get burned. Often, this we're learning in the Purim Maimorim, Balaylahu, in this biggest darkness where there's nowhere to go, that's where Yid finds the Eibush. In the tunnels. You see in the story after story, when there's nothing left, the Jew finds God, because that's who he is, has an neshama, and it's irrepressible. And when life is good, facing this way, facing that way, we get distracted, all kinds of directions. But deep inside, we didn't feel it. The neshama is crying out for a connection. But when it's all the way into depth, then and when we have no other direction to go, then that's what's going to come out. And we're seeing this mamish in story after story. So the neshama is, and moreover, Chassidus says, the flame is trying to tear itself away from the wick. What holds it back is the fuel. When the fuel is consumed, the flame disappears. It doesn't disappear. Energy doesn't disappear. The flame just merges with the source of fire, whatever that means. Explain it. Nothing disappears. But what keeps it visible? We can see the flame down here is the fuel, and without the fuel, it's gone. So we're going to say now one word. We'll continue next week. The Rambam. We'll talk about the Rambam. Our question was, why does the Rambam begin the laws of a fire on Shabbos by saying, what's fire? To be considered fire, you need the ash. Because what the Rambam is saying is, what is the ash? When something is burnt in fire, so all the components of it disappear. The ash is the most physical part of it that remains. The ash is the fuel that kept the fire tethered here in the first place. He's saying that the soul's longing for the Eibishter cannot be separate from the body. You have to want the ash, the physicality. The whole point of the longing is, and we'll see, the deepest connection is dafka when you're connected to the fuel that kept the fire, the soul tethered to this world, the physical body, and the food and everything else that keeps the body going, that keeps the soul in the body. So we're getting the essence of the answer. We're going to stop here, but you get the point of it. Why does the Rambam, when talking about fire, the first expression of fire is for fire to be considered a fire and a neshama to be considered to doing its shlichus, it's got to be tzorich la'afora. It can't be one way separate, and that's it. Always connected to the fuel, the ash which is left, because the whole purpose is to make this world, which is the Mishkan, home for God. Then we'll revisit all of the details and the nuances, and it'll all be clear. All right, friends. A wonderful day. Megay Daven.